The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. Einstein said that. It is the source of all true art and science. And, that quote often comes to mind when we start a new deep dive. Because today, we're not just looking at a discovery. We're really getting into the complex, sometimes, well, mysterious implications of progress and the resources hidden beneath our feet, or in this case, beneath the waves. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we try to cut through the noise, look at the sources, and give you the insights you need to be, well, truly informed. Today, we're diving into something that's sparking a lot of discussion. It could potentially reshape India's future. The recent news about a major oil discovery in the Andaman Sea. We're looking particularly at how it's been critically discussed in Outlook magazine. Now, for those of you preparing for exams like the UPSC, this is exactly the kind of current affairs topic you need to grasp the energy, the economy, the environment. It's all tied together. And for everyone listening, well, it's a story about India's direction. So our mission today is kind of twofold. First, we want to unpack the economic promises being made around this discovery. What's the big vision? And then, just as crucial, we need to look at the other side, the potential environmental costs, the trade-offs, and we'll be drawing directly from the source material for that.
Yeah, what's fascinating, I think, is how one discovery like this isn't just about oil. It immediately opens up all these interconnected questions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About development, sustainability.
Exactly. It pulls on so many threads.
You have to look at it from all angles. The ripple effects could be huge.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. The black gold beneath the waves, as some are calling it. We're talking about the Andaman Sea. The Union Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Hardeep Singh Puri, he's made quite a significant disclosure. He says India is close to finding a Guyana model oil field there and the potential scale. It's pretty staggering. They're estimating 184,440 crore liters of crude oil.
Right, just to put that in perspective, that translates to roughly 1.84 trillion liters, or in oil industry terms, about 11.6 billion barrels.
The 11.6 billion barrels.
Yeah.
It's enormous. It really points to something potentially transformative.
Mm-hmm. And to really get why that number matters so much, you need to look at India's current energy situation. India is incredibly reliant on imported crude oil. I mean, the latest figures, May 2025, show 90.6% of India's crude comes from outside.
90%, wow.
Yeah. It makes India the world's third highest importer of crude. And with industrialization, urbanization, that dependency is only projected to increase.
So finding a massive domestic source, it changes the game entirely for energy security.
Precisely. It's not just a number. It could mean a fundamental shift towards, greater self-reliance.
And Minister Puri's vision, it's incredibly ambitious, isn't it?
Mm.
He's talking about this discovery potentially catapulting India from a $3.7 trillion economy to a $20 trillion economy.
Which is, a monumental leap he's suggesting there.
It implies drastically cutting down on imports, obviously boosting economic growth across the board.
Mm.
He seems convinced that if these estimates are right, India could cover its own energy needs and maybe even export fuel, positioning India to really surge ahead economically in the region.
And, this fits into a wider picture. This isn't happening in isolation. There's a broader government push for more oil exploration, more excavation. We're seeing more drilling activity, especially in areas that were considered inaccessible before, and a big push for private investment in the domestic oil sector, too.
Right, like efforts in the Krishna-Godavari Basin over the past few years.
Exactly. That's been ongoing. It's all part of a long-term strategy, really, aiming for greater energy independence.
And Puri seems particularly bullish on this Andaman prospect. He actually said, and I'm quoting here, "When I made this statement about the Krishna-Godavari Basin, that was one place. Now we have found green shoots, oil, and several other places," he added. "And I think it's only a matter of time before we find a big Guyana in the Andaman Sea." He definitely sees this specific drilling as a true game changer.
And this is important. We have to acknowledge the technical side. It's not simple. Geological reports do suggest multi-billion barrel reserves, oil and gas, in the Andaman Sea, but they're apparently trapped in intricate deepwater sea structures.
Deepwater structures. So that means it's difficult and probably expensive to get to.
Extremely difficult and extremely expensive. We're talking complex, high-risk, deepwater excavation. If you look at the costs in Guyana, for instance, it could be as high as $100 million per well.
$100 million just for one well. That's incredible.
It really is. So this requires enormous capital, sophisticated technology. It's a huge undertaking.
Which means significant investment is needed from India's major players, right? Companies like IOC, BPCL, HPCL, ONGC, Oil, India Limited.
Absolutely. They need to be heavily involved. The source material we looked at suggests that tapping a field like this could also help India, hold its ground economically, especially with global trade being so volatile.
Okay, this brings us neatly to that Guyana model Puri keeps mentioning. What exactly happened in Guyana? Why is it seen as this big precedent?
Well, Guyana's story is quite something. It's a small South American country, relatively unknown on the global stage until recently. Then, in 2015, ExxonMobil made a massive oil discovery offshore. And suddenly, Guyana became the 17th highest oil reserve holder in the world.
Just like that. From almost nowhere.
Pretty much. And the economic impact, it was explosive. In 2022, Guyana's GDP grew by 62.3%. According to the IMF, that was the highest real GDP growth anywhere in the world that year.
62%. That's hard to even imagine.
It is, and it was almost entirely driven by oil production ramping up. It went from basically zero to over 800,000 barrels a day now. It literally put Guyana on the map in a completely new way.
So you can see why Puri is drawing the comparison. He's looking at that potential Andaman oil reserve, sometimes is mentioned as 2 lakh oil reserve, which seems small, maybe referring to initial finds, but the overall potential is clearly seen as much, much larger, in the billions of barrels potentially.
Right, the scale is key.
And he thinks it could do the same for India. He said, quote, apart from these little discoveries that we find Guyana, and then you will go from a $3.7 trillion economy to a $20 trillion economy straight away. He's projecting a fundamental shift.
He is, but this is where we have to pivot. Because the Guyana model, while economically dazzling, it also comes with a huge asterisk.
The environmental cost.
Exactly. It serves as a really stark cautionary tale about the trade-offs. It's very much a double-edged sword.
And the comparison is powerful there too, isn't it? Guyana used to be known for its incredible green canopy, for ecotourism.
That was its identity, yes. Pristine nature.
But the source says it largely had to give away its green charm to pursue the more lucrative oil route. There's even this irony. Back in 2009, Guyana got $250 million for promising to keep carbon stored in its forests, part of climate change mitigation efforts. And now, climate change is literally at its door. Climate Central mapping suggests much of its coast could be underwater by 2030.
It's a deeply sobering reality. The potential long-term environmental consequences coming home to roost, you could say.
Which brings us right back to the Andaman Islands. Because these islands aren't just some remote location, they're incredibly important ecologically.
Critically important.
Yeah.
And very sensitive. We're talking wildlife sanctuaries, marine parks, and around 179 species of corals. It's a unique, delicate ecosystem.
So the question our source, Outlook, poses is blunt. What does Andaman stand to lose with the discovery of its oil reserve?
And it's a crucial question. Deepwater drilling, by its nature, carries risks. Oil spills, for instance, could be absolutely devastating to those coral reefs, to marine life.
And what about the local economy? Isn't it heavily reliant on tourism?
It is. Damage to the environment would inevitably hit tourism hard. So you're forced to confront this really difficult balance, the pull of economic prosperity versus preserving something unique and, frankly, irreplaceable.
So, okay, where does this leave us? We've looked at the huge economic potential of this Andaman discovery, this ambition to replicate Guyana's growth, gain energy independence.
Which are powerful motivators, no doubt.
But then we have the environmental risks, highlighted by that very same Guyana model, the potential for real ecological damage in a fragile place.
It really crystallizes the dilemma, doesn't it?
It does. So what does it all mean for India's future, and specifically for the future of the Andamans?
Well, I think it raises a fundamental question for all of us, really. When we pursue energy independence, economic growth, especially in ecologically sensitive areas, how do we properly weigh the long-term environmental costs? What's our responsibility in balancing these powerful forces? Because ultimately, this isn't just a discovery. It represents a choice, a profound choice for India.
Indeed. A complex equation, no easy answers there. It's going to need incredibly careful thought and a truly balanced approach. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's certainly one of India's most significant and potentially contentious developments right now. For those of you listening, especially if you're preparing for UPSC or similar exams, remember that understanding these connections, the opportunities, the challenges, the economic angles, the environmental angles, that's absolutely key for being well informed on critical current affairs. If you found this discussion useful, please do take a second to like and subscribe to the deep dive. We'll keep bringing you these in-depth looks at important topics, and we genuinely want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? Does the economic potential outweigh the risks? How should India approach this balance? Drop a comment below with your insights or any questions you have. Your engagement really helps build this community of informed discussion. Until next time, keep digging deeper.